Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Junia. Welcome back to Uncommon Sense. I'm really glad you tuned in. Today, my guest is Hendrik LaVerge. He is an internationally known leader in corporate finance, and he is a principal in FW&L. Hendrik, what is corporate finance?
Corporate finance is managing that part of a corporation which deals specifically with the financial affairs of the company. That's different from production or sales or engineering or research. It is the financial management of the company.
Could you explain that more deeply?
It means primarily that to see to it that the company has enough money in terms of capital for its plant and equipment, and in terms of cash to pay its salaries and the suppliers. That is just the short-term funding part of it.
How did you get prepared for this line of work?
Through experience. I'm a lawyer by training.
Oh.
But in law school, I already had a greater interest in the financial side of the law than in the contract or family or whatever other parts there are. And I started in the family business, which was tobacco trading, which had nothing to do with anything besides the fact it was the family business. They sent me to the New York office because they needed somebody there. But it was not a happy event. And I literally went across the street to the bank that was financing the business, and I became a banker. And so I learned about corporate finance on the spot. Not having
working for the bank.
Working for the bank, yeah.
Did your family approve? Did you ask them? What was their thinking?
No, that was, I think they were very happy that I decided that the family business was not my port of call. And they actually helped in getting the job at the bank. So that was a very happy cooperation, yeah.
Would you describe yourself as a quick study, as they say now?
Oh, yes, definitely, yeah. That's... I had a lucky break. That's also very, very important in what seem rather routine careers. I was picked out as assistant by one of the senior partners in the bank because I had been in Japan, and in 1967 nobody had been in Japan. So he asked me to become his what he called briefcase carrier on a business trip to Japan. And that's literally what it was. I carried the briefcase. I didn't know anything about business. I knew a little bit about Japan. And so but I got to know him well, he got to know me well, and he was a great force in my career.
What took you to Japan at a prior time in life?
I'll make it short. It sounds dramatic in the beginning. I spent the first 5 years of my life almost, in a Japanese concentration camp in Indonesia. Indonesia was one of the countries occupied by Japan during the Second World War, together with Vietnam, not really Vietnam, but Singapore and Philippines. So the Europeans were put in concentration camps, so I had a very strange start in life. And then when I graduated from university, I decided that I was going to take a look at these people who in my youth were always described as abominable. As you can imagine, my mother had no love for Japanese. So I figured I had to find out myself. So I went. And I traveled around in Japan all by myself, not speaking a word Japanese. And having basically no idea what I was doing. It was fun.
And how long did you spend there?
About a month,
And how old were you when you went?
25.
And what was your family doing in Indonesia before?
Tobacco. My father actually worked for a shipping company, but their business was tobacco and exporting tobacco, and they needed ships for that. So my father was in the transportation side of the trading business.
Oh, interesting. What happened to your family after World War
My
II?
father died. It was worked to death. Most people, our generation, remember the movie The Bridge Over the River Kwai. Well, he worked on a similar project and died, and so we left. I really did have much of a family there, but my mother and my sisters, we left, went to Australia after the war, and then back to Europe.
You must have had some help getting to Australia.
My mother was very resourceful. We ended up in a Australian paratroopers plane. How that happened has never been explained. But my mother, my two sisters, and our nanny in September of 1945 got on a plane and flew to Australia. A part of history which will never be explained properly by anybody. It's over and out. But funny things happened in 45.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many stories. And your mother wanted to go back to Europe?
Had to. It was such a chaos in Indonesia at that time that there was really no option to stay.
And she didn't feel comfortable in Australia?
We all liked it, but
Right.
no, it was a wonderful country, but there was no real reason to stay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you returned to Europe?
To Europe, to
And
Holland, where she was born, and where my father was born, and she was she was a lawyer, and she went back into practice, and as a matter of fact, very soon became not a part of the legal establishment, and then as beyond the lawyers, the district attorneys. She was a special district attorney, and then became a judge, one of the first female judges in the country.
Oh my goodness. Quite an entrepreneur herself.
Oh yes, oh yes, yes.
And what values did she raise you with? What did she insist on?
Boring.
Boring?
Yeah, hard work, honesty, respect your parents. I think those were three very basic values. Oh, another one is humility.
Yes.
Yes, she was not very good at it herself, but she thought we should excel in it. Excelling in humility is difficult to begin with as a concept, but yes, that's.
Is that the Dutch culture?
Yeah. It's very Dutch. All of it is very Dutch. Yeah, and save money.
Yes.
Never live high off the hog. That's bad karma.
I'm surprised she could spend hardly any money at all after what she had been through.
Well, the family had money, and she had I mean, being a judge gives you a decent income, enough to raise a family, and so that was never an issue, to my recollection. Of course, I didn't know, but it was never discussed. One thing you always also taught, you never talk about money. That was another thing.
Yes.
That's golden rule.
So you grew up speaking English?
Yeah, my first language, my first language was Malay with my nanny, my darling nanny. Then when I went to Australia, my first official taught language was English, Australian English. And then we kept it up. We were sent over to England during vacations, and we spoke English. Being multilingual is also a very Dutch thing. And we had a French-speaking nanny. We spoke French at home as children, in addition to English and Dutch.
And so at what point in your life did you come here?
Oh, when I had finished my schooling, including my law degree, I set out to inventory what was there to do in the world, and I ended up at the mouth of the Columbia River in Oregon, and said, this is it. This is where I want to stay. Difficult to stay, so I ended up in New York. But I fell in love with this country at first sight.
How would you describe the people in Oregon? That was different from Holland.
And from Asia, where I
And
had
from
just
Asia.
spent 6 months. Open, friendly, informal, practical. Yeah, I think those are
And
good.
Asian, how would you describe it? at
Oh,
that
it's
time?
very circumspect, and they can be very friendly, but they all can be very non-friendly in a very formal way. You have to know who you're dealing with and what you're doing. I've lived there afterwards also in my adult life. I lived in Singapore for a number of years. And I love the people. I think Chinese are wonderful. I thank God on my bare knees that the world is going to be ruled by Chinese and not by Indians 50 years from now. I really like Chinese. They have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And but some, you have to. I'm not particularly fond of Malays.
Yeah.
And Malaysia Malays. Indonesia Malays are, primarily the Javanese, are pretty cool characters. They're
What does that mean?
cool. They
Well,
just
cool has two definitions.
well, in my definition, cool is they think of what they're doing, and they are rather circumspect in what they say and do, but in a sort of classy way.
Yes.
Difficult to have 200 million classy people of Java,
Yes.
100 million, but yeah, in general, yeah.
Oh, interesting. What do you remember of the internment camp?
Nothing. My blessing.
Yes,
It's
it
a
is.
well-known psychiatric trick that you forget what you don't want to remember.
Really?
Completely blank.
Not the food, not the smell, not the...
No. I remember there's sort of a gray area, sort of a overexposed photograph where you really can't see much,
Yes.
sort of shadowy gray,
Interesting.
which is good.
It is good.
Yeah, nothing good to remember from it. So.
So you have a talent for really adjusting yourself to a variety of cultures, really.
Oh, I love to do that, yes. Yeah.
What is the first thing you do when you change a culture and go to a culture you're not known to know?
Listen, look, get to know the people, talk to the people, ask them questions. Like you ask me questions, I ask their questions. And yeah, it's part of the exploratory aspects of life that I enjoy, very much enjoy.
Is it the level of knowing or the surprises?
It's not the level of knowing. It's the novelty of it.
The novelty, the
Yes.
surprises.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. Yeah.
Fun. It's fun.
Well, you had to probably learn a change in body language, and how you move. I find Americans take up a lot of space.
So do I. No, I have never learned that trick. As a matter of fact, I have to do the opposite. Although my mother taught me humility in a physical sense, I've never been able to do that. I stick out. I'm 6'3", and 225 pounds. So it's hard to hide yourself.
Yes.
But no, I remember last year I was on a trip in Mongolia, and we were arrested. I was on horseback, and we were arrested by the Mongolian border police. And of course, I didn't speak a word of Mongolian. They didn't speak any English. So the guy was barking at me, some Mongolian sergeant or so, sitting in his jeep. But I was on a horse. Now, the Mongolian horses are not big, but they're bigger than a jeep. So I barked at him. I said, what the hell are you talking about? I have no idea what you're saying. And so a guide, who was a very nice young man, jumped off his horse and came over me and said, in English, "Get off your horse." I was projecting the complete wrong image of a Westerner, looking down on a Mongolian border guard. That was dangerous. So no, I don't adjust well. I don't even try because I know it doesn't work.
What got you interested in a project in Mongolia?
I like to do things, and I hunt with birds, falcons and hawks. Also, I do this here in Vermont and in Europe, in Scotland primarily. And I learned about hunting with eagles, which of course 3 times the size of an average hawk. And then I found out where that is done, and that was done in that part of Mongolia, northwestern Mongolia. And I went. I got a crazy friend who, to join me, and we went. And we had a ball. And I met this young fella who was our guide. And he had this pretty far-fetched idea of developing a tourist business in that part of the world, which is really totally out of nowhere. And I saw the value of it, and I saw the opportunity for myself to come back and do some more hunting. So and since my business is to start businesses, it was not a big deal to write a business plan for him and a budget and put some money up. That usually helps, and that's how it started.
And then you would do the same corporate finance approach? You would raise money from others?
No, I never got around to that. 1 or 2 people said, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah.
So I said, "Yeah, so let's just drop that issue." And it doesn't need a whole lot of money. It's more elbow grease than anything else. But the principles are all the same. Make a plan, stick to the plan, have a budget, be sure that the money is there, never run out of cash. There are very simple rules of they were used by Rockefeller to build the Standard Oil, and they apply to everything and everybody who ever gets involved in a new business.
I can understand getting a translator for the language, but how would you get a translator for the business customs?
Very difficult, very difficult. Trial and error. I can tell you stories, the errors I made are not even funny.
Oh, I'd like to hear one.
Well,
if you're willing.
yes, this was so funny. I decided that to build a hotel. If you start a tourist business, you need a place where people can stay. And so we built this small hotel, and with bathrooms, something that doesn't exist there, including johns and bathtubs and things. So, and I made the designs because there was nobody to make the design for the hotel. And so it was all duly drawn, and I came there, and I walked through the building, which was up. It was not complete, it was up. And I said, "Where are the sewage lines?" Sewage lines? No sewage lines. So they had to actually pull down half the building because they had never heard of a bathroom, so they had never thought of the sewage line. And even although they were in the plan, they just had blissfully ignored it and thought it was. They understood that you had to get water to the first floor to fill the bathtub. Whatever came out of the bathtub, they hadn't thought about it. So how do you learn? It was an expensive way of learning. And the interesting thing was the way they reacted to this blooper of monumental proportions. They did not want to admit that they had made a mistake. So first I didn't take to that too nicely. And then I realized they didn't want to admit they'd made a mistake because that would make me feel so unhappy that the fact that I had chosen them as my partners. So you have to really dig 2 or 3 levels. And that comes then out after, 4 vodkas at the end of the dinner. Finally, they start to tell you a little bit more. So you learn. I can tell you 1,000 stories.
Well, one more, and then because people dread, and they feel so foolish when it happens, but it happens everywhere all the time.
Yeah, but you make
That's
nothing.
how you learn. Detail.
Yeah, well, it's also in very big things. I remember one of my great surprises once that I lost 40,000 tons of tapioca. And until I figured out what had happened, this was in Indonesia, and it was the 40,000 tons is a lot of stuff.
It feels like it.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's warehouses full of stuff. And we had, this is a business example. We had been told that the tapioca which we had bought was in very good hands because it was stored in the Navy part of the port of Surabaya on Java in Indonesia. And so well protected, nobody was going to get to it. Till I got there, and the people were acting funny. You know, you have to feel it. And there was, they said, "You want to see the tapioca?" I said, "Yes, I would like to see the tapioca." And tapioca is in sort of branches. It comes from a bush. And so, so they opened the door, and there was this huge pile of tapioca, and like, you know, I don't know, 20, 30 feet high. I don't know. So I said, "Well, that's a lot of tapioca. Do you have a ladder, a step ladder?" And then they started to get a little bit nervous, but they finally got one. I went up the step ladder, and it was exactly 3 feet wide, the wall of tapioca. And for the rest, you had this huge empty warehouse. and so then you learn. You learn that the people you should least trust is the admiral of the port of Surabaya, because he becomes the admiral by being the biggest crook. So the higher the rank, the higher the probability that you deal with a crook. That's what you learn.
That's significant.
Yeah, when you bribe people, always bribe the people at the bottom, because they don't want to really, you know, fleece you. You try to bribe an admiral, you're in trouble. He asks too much and he delivers too little. So you learn.
And the people at the bottom, the ones who do the work.
Yeah, that's how it is. I mean, of course, it's very bad on a public meeting like what you do and talk about bribery. But as we all know, it happens everywhere in the rest of the world. So you have to participate in it. Never bribe big.
So if you were going to have 40,000 tons of tapioca and not have that happen, what would you have done differently?
Well, there's nothing that I could have done differently. I made a mistake by trusting this admiral. I should have known that the fact that he was later. Then I found out that the fact that he was an admiral was, as I said earlier, a reason to distrust him. I thought it was a reason to trust him.
Yes. But would you have dealt with him again or dealt differently?
No, I know I would.
But how would you know if you went another port? You wouldn't have.
Well, I wouldn't do it. I would have my own security guards, and don't trust in a promise by some bloke who I should have known never got to that position the right way. So yeah, you can. There are many ways that you can do it. I was in the commodity business where you deal with a lot of quantity of stuff which gets stolen, and so I'm a big user of. Used to be. I don't do it anymore, but still would recommend it of security. Security forces, people.
And then how do you know your guys don't get bribed?
Because they work for me, and then I make sure that I trust people that work for me. I'm fairly good at that. I've learned it the hard way. I mean, I've been also disappointed, but by and large, when I hire people to work for me, I go with my gut feel. Do I trust them or not?
What do you look for?
Their eyes. Their
what face,
do their
eyes tell
their reaction. You know when you can trust somebody. I mean, it's something that you learn. I think wisdom that's hard to achieve. Quality includes your ability to read people, to make a judgment about a person. You need experience. You need to have worked with people, and you develop a certain skill in it. And some people are very good at it. Some people never learn. I'm pretty good at it.
Interesting. I've always wondered about the relationship of looks and trust.
Right.
In other words, if you get someone who's exceptionally attractive, beautiful eyes and whatever, and, you know, nice skin, versus someone who is not that.
Yeah.
If you already prejudiced one way or another towards either one of them.
Well, first of all, it depends whether it's a man or a woman. I distrust beautiful men particularly because I have again learned in life that they misuse it probably more. Not that it's very effective, but they build themselves up in an image because they're good looking, and very often they're fake. Beautiful women can be very wonderful because they know they're beautiful, so they know what they're doing and they don't care because they have this strength. And then there's very often very pleasant, besides the fact that they look good, to deal with. So I have met very few pretty, solid, reliable men. I have met very many beautiful, pretty, reliable women. So in itself, looks don't say much. You go beyond it, and you test a little bit.
How would you test?
A conversation, just asking things and trying to see how they react, and try to have them ask you questions. And what you're doing, you're good at having a conversation. You gauge people from the questions you ask, and that's what you do in real life also, not in front of cameras, but in real life.
So we've had a wonderful time with Hendrik, and we've learned several things. One is to be an entrepreneur in your life. And when things don't feel well, like the family tobacco business, to just stretch a little and launch, and not be afraid that you don't have the cookie cutter preparation for it, but also your ability to get along and be a reliable person in relationship, in your business relationships, separate from, and certainly true in your personal relationships, is also important. His ability to use strength when he feels it's needed, and to discover and support the rightness of hiring good people and learning how to do that well. So as you go into life, be that kind of person, entrepreneurial, own the mistake, don't blame anybody for your mistake. I can tell you that. That's my philosophy. I goof up, someone else goes up, my responsibility. Anyway, that's the way you learn. And so take his enthusiasm, take his experience, take his generosity, and take his curiosity for life, going to Japan for a month. Wonderful. Anyway, have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next week, and thank you so very much for tuning in today.
To contact Junia, send her an email at info@juniadone.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadone.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.